All righty. Welcome to DevSecOps, the good, the bad, the ugly. My name is Zach Nord, and I am your host. This videocast series is related to all things DevOps. Today I have with me Brian Fox, who is the CTO at Sonatype. Some of you may recall that I had Brian on previously, and the reason I'm bringing him on here again is because I was tracking this new type of supply chain attack that's happening in the open source community, which is an area that I focus on, that I'm passionate about. It's called Octopus, is the vulnerability that was here recently. Brian and his team have been doing some in-depth research on it. Brian, thanks so much for being willing to come on here, share a little bit about the research you guys are doing. To kick things off, can you just start by explaining what is this vulnerability and what makes it unique?
The GitHub blog post, they were originally notified on March 9th about malware being distributed via certain projects that were in GitHub. The disclosure itself, this became public just last week. I think it was on Friday that it really became widespread. And so what this is the Octopus virus or malware. And we've spent time in the past talking about the fact that developer infrastructure and these types of things have become increasingly the focus of the bad guys, where they're inserting crypto miners or things that steal keys from development environments. And so this one fits into that kind of dimension, in that it's basically leveraging the NetBeans IDE to perpetrate what it's doing. However, what's really new and novel about this is the actual viral nature of it. So what happens is it leverages the IDE to infect both the jars that your developers create for your custom application, but it also finds and infects all of the project dependencies that also go into that. And so it basically ensures its ability to replicate downstream and sort of horizontally from project to project via these infected project dependencies.
So in order for somebody to truly be affected by the vulnerability, do they need to have the JetBeans IDE as well, or?
Yes, this particular piece of code is highly customized for NetBeans. And you know, the researchers that have looked into this, and just the gut feel of all of us is that is kind of unusual. And so NetBeans is by far not the most popular, right? IntelliJ, VS Code, Eclipse, all way more popular. And I think it's unlikely to assume that those can't be, manipulated in similar ways. So this either indicates one of two things. Either there are some exploits that are out there and we just haven't figured it out. This was speculation on the GitHub blog that could be the case, that we just happen to have noticed the least common one. Or this could be sort of a probing attack, a proof of concept. And I think we've found some evidence that kind of indicates that could be the case, that all of the infected projects that were pushed to GitHub were all basically new projects and were things that were not what you would typically consider to be dependencies that people would pick up in a mass way. So, looking at it, we kind of speculate that this was an attempt to see how far and how long this would go, via a limited release. If you want to let a virus out of a lab, but you're not sure what's going to happen, maybe you let it out in an island or something, right? And we think that could be the case here. But it like all attacks before, there will be copycats. This is the first of its kind. It's not going to be the last.
And that brings up a great point, as we look at the future, because this is ultimately a supply chain attack. How should companies prepare moving forward? And again, I know we sell Sonatype and we have our own specific solution. So outside of that, just how should an organization prepare for these supplies?
Well, I think this particular one is really near and dear to my heart, because since the beginning, when we started building tools to help people understand their supply chain, we focused on the binaries. And part of that was because in the early days of Maven, I did a lot of work on the dependency resolver. I wrote the dependency plugin, and maybe was maybe too informed to understand all of the ways in which what you actually get in your final application can deviate from what the developer has asked for in the manifest. And so we
Sure.
designed our solution to inspect the binaries at the end result of the build,
Right.
because we were always aware that somebody might pick up the wrong version from a bad repository, or there could be something else going on in the build system that swaps out the dependencies, right? So this is an example of why tools that only read the manifest and build bill of materials and try to say whether you're secure or not ultimately aren't sufficient, because this attack, nobody in their palm is saying, please give me a virus version of whatever dependency I'm using.
Sure. Right.
And yet that's what they end up with in the end. And so your manifest is not going to show this, right? And so, like I wrote in the blog, it's like inspecting a food item by merely reading the recipe and saying, sure, the ingredients, nobody said there's poison in the ingredients list, so this should be good, right? That's the equivalent of what we're talking about here. And so the way this would appear in our tools would be that you have a manipulated jar that you didn't expect to have, right? And it would trigger policy alerts, much the way a virus scanner would when certain parts of your critical system start to be mutated in ways you didn't expect.
Got it. So you can configure policies based off of those deviations
Right.
on that. That's interesting. So moving forward, is this an area that Sonatype's looking at around supply chain? I mean, obviously, I'm sure it has to be, but I mean, anything that you could share there?
Yeah, we're looking at the details of this particular virus to understand how we can better recognize it within either the custom code that our customers are building, or in the dependencies that are either being published in the open source community or being consumed by customers. So because we're doing the binary analysis and we already have ways of detecting similar components and copies of things and things that are renamed, we have a lot of data that just works in the way our system is already built to do this type of detection, that we think will allow us to be able to pretty quickly recognize this and develop compensating mechanisms. Now, it may be the case that the Octopus, because of the things I talked about before, that it wasn't attacking a major IDE, it wasn't major popular dependencies didn't yet get infected. It may be the case that we've limited the spread of this particular thing, but at Sonatype, we're treating this as the worst case scenario, because I expect that the next one may be, right? So we're using this to understand how do we adapt what we're already doing to cover this in an even better and more expedient way. So, for example, in the future, if something comes along, we can easily poke the data into our system and have it automatically trigger for our customers, hopefully without them even having to update the detection software on their side, right? We want to be able to push this out as soon as possible, just like we do for any of our security vulnerabilities.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I know the team's been working on that, following the Slack. So, hey, appreciate you coming on, being willing to share what this vulnerability is for those that maybe have just seen a few blogs on it. We're interested in getting some more details, and as well as how Sonatype's approaching the problem. So, do appreciate that.
Yep, thanks.